is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: conflicting reports over who controls the city of Bakhmut. Russian mercenaries say they've taken control, but Ukraine says it's still defending its territory. Our other headlines: Finland is about to become the 31st member of NATO. Its request to join the military alliance prompted by the war in Ukraine. Donald Trump is expected to head to New York ahead of his court hearings to face charges related to hush money paid to a porn star. And raising a toast, China's national drink, Baijiu, sets its sights on customers in the UK and Europe. Conflicting claims are coming out of Bakhmut in Ukraine. A Russian mercenary group has claimed to have raised the flag in the center of the city, but Kyiv says its defense is holding strong. Fighting has raged in the city of Bakhmut, seeing some of the bloodiest battles of the conflict. Both sides have suffered huge casualties, and much of the city has been devastated by bombardment. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. Dasha, first of all, do we know any more about exactly who is in control of the city of Bakhmut now?
Well, there was no mention of the city of Bakhmut in the most recent briefing of Russia's defense ministry that was released a few hours ago. Now, what we have heard, though, was the acting head of Donetsk Republic, Denis Pushilin, saying that the fighting was still ongoing in central parts of the city. He was saying that the Russian forces were coming closer to the railway station. And a couple of days ago, he was the one who was quoted as saying that over 70% of the town were in control of the Russian forces, and he was expressing the hopes that the fighting would not take long. At the same time, we have heard from the head of Russia's Wagner mercenary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, saying that he raised the Russian flag over the building of the local administration, and saying that now, judicially, the Russian forces were in control of the city. At the same time, he was also saying that the fighting was still ongoing in the western parts of the city. So we're yet to hear for more clarifications, particularly from the Russian Defense Ministry, as to what is happening there on the ground.
And what do we know about the investigation into the killing of the Russian military blogger, Vladlen Tatarsky? I think we may have lost the line to Dasha, but we may try to return to our correspondent in Moscow later in the bulletin. In the meantime, we'll carry on with the rest of today's news. NATO's chief, Jens Stoltenberg, says Finland will join the defence alliance on Tuesday. The announcement comes 4 days after Turkey approved a bill to approve Finland's application. Ankara was the last of the 30 members to ratify Finland's membership. Helsinki's request to join came after last year's Russian attack on Ukraine. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Alex Cadier in Brussels. Alex, so finally Finland has made it into the NATO military alliance, a significant moment.
Very significant, Jamie, and just shy of a year since Finland applied jointly with Sweden. Now joining, there's going to be a flag-raising ceremony at NATO headquarters tomorrow at the foreign ministers' meeting here in Brussels. Jens Stoltenberg saying it will be a good day for Finland's security, for Nordic security, and for NATO as a whole. The Finnish foreign minister saying it's a historic moment for us, for Finland, but the most important objective in the meeting will be to emphasize NATO's support of Ukraine. And of course, that was the motivating factor. Finland, like Sweden, has been militarily neutral for many, many years now and has not been minded to join military alliances. But following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there was a real concern from the Finnish government and from Finnish people that Moscow had no regard for territorial integrity, and therefore it felt the need to join the NATO alliance and that defensive alliance to assure its security. At least that is what the Finns tell us behind this slightly bumpy road to accession. It was expected at the time. Jens Stoltenberg said it would be the fastest accession ever. It is certainly for Finland a very fast one. It's the first accession since North Macedonia joined in 2020. And so very much a welcome step for Finland, a bit of a bittersweet moment for the Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin, of course, because she lost in the Finnish elections in the last couple of days, but will be present at that flag-raising ceremony, we understand. It will be a big step for Finland, having been militarily neutral for so long, joining that NATO defensive alliance and really bolstering its position in the Nordics. Jamie?
Alex, Sweden still waiting, of course. Do we think Turkey will give its approval anytime soon?
Yeah, Sweden left awkwardly waiting in the cold. There was a lot of chat at the beginning of this process that Finland and Sweden would apply together and would not be separated. Obviously, that became less and less feasible as time went on. The understanding is that there is a new timeline, or at least certainly the timeline will be, hopefully this can be done before July, but it's not just Turkey with its objections linked to Kurdish leaders being able to stay in Sweden, which Turkey obviously sees as terrorist organizations, but also Hungary has an issue with Sweden's accession, very clearly pointing out in the last couple of days that actually Stockholm's criticism of Prime Minister Viktor Orban is one of the concerns that Hungary has. Now, critics of Hungary in particular will say that they are just using this as an opportunity to exert leverage on other countries and use Sweden's accession as a bargaining chip, but we'll have to wait. The new target is before the Vilnius summit for NATO in July.
Alex, thank you for that. Our correspondent Alex Cadier in Brussels. Now, if I think we might try and return to Russia and our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. Dasha, I was asking you what we know about the investigation into the killing of the Russian military blogger Vladlen Tatarsky.
Yes, indeed. The Russian Investigative Committee has identified and detained the main suspect, who is a 26-year-old Russian national, Daria Trepova. She was brought into questioning, and in a video that was released by the Russian Interior Ministry, she admitted to having brought the statuette that has later exploded and killed the Russian military blogger and reporter Vladlen Tatarsky, whose real name is Maxim Fomin. Now, what she is saying is that she was at the site of the killing of Vladlen Tatarsky, so it's very likely that she didn't know what she was doing. At the same time, she promised to identify the person, to name the person who gave this statuette to her. Now, the Russian Investigative Committee certainly has many questions, and they are taking this matter into their control. But also we have heard from the Russian National Anti-Terrorist Committee saying that that was clearly an act of terrorism, and blamed the Ukrainian intelligence that was assisted by the opposition blogger Alexei Navalny's supporters here in Russia. So we understand that the Kremlin regards this incident as an act of terrorism and says that the Ukrainian regime, as Moscow describes the authorities in Ukraine, is behind that and has been involved into the numerous murders of the Russian prominent people and journalists and reporters, saying that that has been the case since 2014, and that's why the Russian special military operation, as Moscow calls it, was absolutely necessary. So the investigation is underway. We're looking into more details, but at this moment, this main suspect has been identified and detained.
Dasha, thank you for that. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. French President Emmanuel Macron is hosting EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen ahead of their joint visit to China this week. The two leaders are expected to discuss the Ukraine conflict as well as preparations for their visit to Beijing, where they'll have a joint meeting with China's President Xi Jinping. The navies of South Korea, the United States and Japan have begun 2 days of anti-submarine exercises in waters off South Korea. Authorities in Seoul say the second trilateral anti-submarine exercises in 6 months are designed to counter the evolving nuclear and missile threats from the DPRK. China's foreign ministry has blamed these drills for the high tensions on the Korean peninsula. Passport office workers in England, Scotland and Wales have begun a 5-week walkout. More than 1,000 staff are striking as part of a long-running dispute over pay, pensions and conditions. The union behind the strikes has warned that the industrial action will cause huge delays for those looking to renew their passports ahead of the summer holidays. Now, so far this year, tech companies including Alphabet, Meta and Amazon have laid off more than 120,000 staff. For many high-skilled visa holders in the United States, being laid off brings added pressure to find a new job amid fears of deportation. CGTN's correspondent Mark New reports.
Roughly 600,000 people are in the U.S. on the high-skilled worker H-1B visa. While tech companies have traditionally lobbied for more, they now find themselves cutting thousands of those very same employees. Under the rules, H-1B visa holders who lose their jobs have 60 days to find employment elsewhere or be deported.
It's a really a stressful situation. I've got friends, colleagues who are on H1 and they're frankly quite worried. Often if you do get laid off, having to figure out what happens to you is quite stressful. And these are like my own friends. These are people who have built their families and homes in this place. So, yeah, I feel for them.
Some Democratic lawmakers in the U.S. have begun lobbying U.S. Immigration Services to extend from 60 to 120 days the amount of time high-tech visa holders can stay in the country after losing their jobs. The President's Advisory Committee on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders also recently drafted a recommendation to extend it even longer to 180 days.
I think it's entirely reasonable that a company would extend visa status for their foreign-born workers in order to provide more time for those previous employees to find work, especially if they've profited off of these former employees when they really needed them. That you could say that this would be fair treatment.
Hao Ning Zhang is from Harbin, China, and was on an H-1B visa working for Google in California. But like thousands of Google staff, he's just been laid off and is now quickly sending out resumes and applying for jobs.
I'm nervous, like it's come from a lot of competitor, and also it's come from I don't know when the market will come back. Hopefully I can get a job as soon as possible, but I'm not sure. So because right now, because the hiring bar is much higher than before.
In addition to applying for jobs, he spends hours each day preparing for potential interviews, which typically put applicants through challenging coding tests. Zhang says he hasn't had time to feel sad about losing his job, for he needs to stay focused on finding and preparing for the next opportunity before the clock runs out. Mark New, CGTN, Palo Alto, California.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, raising a glass to exports. China's Baijiu hopes to win new customers far beyond its traditional shores.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann.
Welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Conflicting reports over who controls the city of Bakhmut. Russian mercenaries say they've taken control, but Ukraine says it's still defending its territory. Our other headlines: Finland becomes the 31st member of NATO. Its request to join the military alliance prompted by the invasion of Ukraine. Former US President Donald Trump is set to fly to New York ahead of his court hearing on Tuesday related to hush money allegedly paid to a porn star before the 2016 presidential election. New York City police have stepped up security ahead of Trump's arrival. He's the first former president to face criminal charges. His lawyers say he intends to plead not guilty. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Nick Harper outside Donald Trump's residence in Florida. Nick, when is Donald Trump expected in New York, and then what happens next?
Yeah, Jamie, about an hour and 45 minutes until he leaves Mar-a-Lago, that you can see just behind me. So the countdown is very much underway. He'll then be driving the 3 miles, a short distance, to West Palm Beach International Airport, and he'll be leaving there at 12:20 local time. It's a 2-hour, 10-minute flight to LaGuardia, New York. He'll then head to Trump Tower to spend the night before he gets ready to arrive at 11 a.m. local time Tuesday for that 2:15 court appearance. That is according to the schedule. All of it could change, but that is what we're expecting from Donald Trump over the next few hours. We've had a few supporters out here over the last couple of hours, but not many. Media certainly outnumbers the number of people who've come out to show their support. But of course, security is very tight at the other end of all of this in New York City. We've already seen the police, the FBI, the special security services working to block off roads, put up security barriers, not just outside the courthouse, but also at Trump Tower. There is an expectation that we will see protests and potentially his supporters also out on the streets. They want to make sure that all of this runs very smoothly, considering they're trying to get an ex-president into a courthouse without any problems.
Nick, this case isn't Donald Trump's only legal headache. The former president also the focus of other state and federal investigations.
Yeah, you're right, Jamie. And those ones potentially more serious than this one, which essentially relates to business fraud, accounting practices. We've got a probe in Georgia looking to his attempts to try and overturn the 2020 election. There's a special prosecutor looking into the classified documents found in Mar-a-Lago that he allegedly took from the White House after he left. And of course, there is that investigation looking into his role in the lead up to and on the day of the January 6th attack on the US Capitol. Those last two are the federal investigations and could carry much more serious penalties should he be charged with any crimes and should those come to trial.
Nick, what do his supporters make of all of this? I mean, does it embolden them, or is there a sense that his star is waning?
Well, the ones who have been out here throughout the weekend, I've been here and I've been talking to them, they are certainly galvanized, they're passionate. They really feel that this indictment is a way of the Democrats launching yet another political attack on the man that they feel should be back in the White House next year. They say it's a witch hunt, echoing Donald Trump's own words, and they say that really it's only because they want to discredit his campaign. They've become emboldened, they've become impassioned by all of this, and they want to show his support. Opinion polls, also interesting to note, out yesterday showed that more Republican voters are now backing Donald Trump. They feel over any other candidate who may run for the nomination for the Republican Party next year, they feel that Donald Trump is the man who should get that nomination, despite all of these investigations and now these criminal charges that he's facing.
Nick, thanks for that. Our correspondent Nick Harper in Florida. Montenegro's former economy minister is set to become the country's new president after a landslide victory. 36-year-old Jakov Milatovic, who campaigned on a pro-EU and anti-corruption platform, won around 60% of the vote in the runoff ballot. CGTN's correspondent Alyosha Malenkovic reports.
Celebrations on the streets of Montenegro's capital. People driving cars through the main city streets, waving flags and honking car horns. Just minutes before, it was clear that Jakov Milatovic won a landslide victory over Milo Djukanovic.
Tonight is the night that we've been waiting for more than 30 years. And Godspeed to this victory for all of us.
At the headquarters of Milatovic's Europe Now party, many opposition leaders came to show support. And the Prime Minister, Dritan Abazovic, was there too, to back the political direction of the new president.
This evening, Montenegro made a decisive step forward. It said goodbye to this obsolete regime of Mr. Đukanović and made a step forward towards the richer, more just, equal, prettier and European Montenegro. And Godspeed to us.
While Milatovic's supporters celebrated in Europe Now, at Đukanovic's DPS, the atmosphere was somber. Yet Đukanović, in his final address, tried to be dignified in defeat.
Crna Gora izabrala, ja taj izbor poštujem.
Montenegro made its choice and I respect it. I congratulate Jakov Milatovic on the trust he received in the election. I wish for him to be a successful president, because if he's a successful president, that might mean that Montenegro will be a successful nation and it will continue to go toward its goal.
Đukanovic's mandate will end on May 21st. Many in the country say that it was marred with alleged corruption and organized crime scandals. The allegations most likely cost him the elections.
Montenegro has a new president. It is the end of an era, as Milo Đukanović is ousted after 33 years in power. The change is welcomed by many here, but the expectations from the new president are also high. Aljoša Milenković, CGTN, Podgorica.
Finland's Prime Minister Sanna Marin has conceded defeat in the country's parliamentary election. The opposition Conservative National Coalition Party came top, followed by the right-wing populist party, the Finns. Marin's party was third, with all three receiving around 20% of the vote, meaning now a coalition will be required. And Bulgaria is set for coalition discussions after Sunday's parliamentary election failed to produce a clear winner. It's the country's fifth election in 2 years. And the initial results showed Conservatives and Liberals were neck and neck. Official results are expected to be released later in the week, when the leader of the winning party will start talks on forming a coalition. Rwanda's President Paul Kagame has been re-elected as the chairman of the ruling party, the Rwandan Patriotic Front. Kagame defeated Abdul Karim Harimana at the party's 16th National Congress. Kagame has been Rwanda's president for 22 years. He will now serve another 5 years at the head of the political party he's led since 1998. China's national drink, baijiu, has been consumed in the country for centuries. Despite being the world's most consumed liquor, the alcoholic drink is little known outside the country. A delegation from the China Alcoholic Drinks Association has paid a visit to the UK, hoping to boost sales. Our correspondent Li Juanha reports.
For whiskey lovers, this is heaven. Tasting and toasting. Fans at Whiskey Live London get to enjoy a range of brands from across the world.
People who are into their whiskies have a chance not only to try some stuff that they may not have had the chance to try otherwise, but also to talk to the people that make it and the people that really understand it to develop their knowledge.
Last year, the Asia-Pacific region overtook the European Union as the industry's largest regional market. Exports to China in particular recorded double-digit growth as post-COVID recovery continues, topping $263 million last year.
I don't know how many bottles, but I know that there was a direct shipment from Scotland into China in August last year. The first shipment was 1 million bottles. I would imagine there's quite a lot of those bottles now finding their way to China.
Likewise, China is finding ways to export its national spirit baijiu to the UK and Europe. A delegation from the CADA, that's China's Alcoholic Drinks Association, has arrived to sign an agreement with Paragraph, a company that's committed to delivering services within the drinks sector. The aim is to send more Chinese baijiu to European retailers.
When it comes to drinking, there's a huge cultural difference between the Chinese and Westerners. The Chinese like drinking to socialize with others, and there must be Chinese food to go with it. We know the Chinese are keen about drinking etiquette, which is quite different.
For some, it's the taste and high alcohol content that make Chinese baijiu hard to take.
Oh, I think baijiu is very promising for the European market, but there needs to be experimentation. I have tasted fabulous baijiu mixed with fruit in a cocktail. So we need to present baijiu in a different way to the European people.
Official figures show that China produced 6.7 billion litres of baijiu last year. Experts say only a tiny fraction was exported. The European market for Chinese baijiu is relatively young at this point, and the signing of the agreement may help baijiu push into the European markets, and hopefully in the future we'll see baijiu share these shelves with whiskey. Li Jianhua, CGTN, London.
Tea farming is a labour-intensive business. For generations, farmers in one of China's tea-growing regions have relied on the experience of planting and harvesting handed down from generation to generation. But now technology is changing all of that. Our correspondent Wu Lei reports.
Harvesting of West Lake Longjing tea in Zhejiang province begins in March. A premium quality green tea. It's mainly farmed in Longjing village in the West Lake district of the provincial capital Hangzhou. Tea farmers traditionally had to rely solely on their experience, with no modern technology to help them deal with unpredictable changes in the weather. This high-tech power and meteorological equipment is installed on the top of the mountain, collecting weather data and monitoring the yield and quality of Longjing tea trees. Powered by the sun and wind, these facilities operate 24 hours a day.
We collect data including air temperature and humidity, wind direction, rainfall, and atmospheric pressure. The data are sent back to our system in real time. It will offer detailed reference for tea plantation management so as to improve the quality of the tea.
Ni Yong says his company has installed more than 20,000 sets of this equipment across China, offering digital solutions for farming fruits, rice, and other foods. Now companies are working together to combine technologies such as 5G, AI, and blockchain to support agricultural production.
We use blockchain technology to ensure the production, sales, and traceability of all Longjing tea. This is our blockchain ID card. The certificate on the blockchain, it cannot be tampered with or be eliminated in any way to ensure the authenticity of the data.
China is one of the world's largest tea markets, and it's hoped more digital technologies can be used to help the agricultural sector meet growing consumer demand. Wu Lei, CGTN, Hangzhou, Zhejiang Province.
The headlines again. Conflicting reports over who controls the city of Bakhmut. Russian mercenaries say they've taken control, but Ukraine says it's still defending its territory. Our other headlines: Finland becomes the 31st member of NATO. Its request to join the military alliance prompted by the invasion of Ukraine. And Donald Trump is expected to head to New York ahead of his court hearing to face charges related to hush money paid to a porn star. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel, on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.